No one wanted the 500-pound mail-order bride, till a giant rancher said, "She birthed my heirs." The stagecoach door creaks open. Dust swirls down a silent main street, and every eye turns to the woman who steps down. Laughter erupts. Contracts are torn, and she is left standing alone in the dirt. Then heavy boots pound the ground. A shadow falls across the crowd. A rancher, taller than them all, lifts her into his arms and makes a vow that silences the jeers. But what begins as a shocking claim in the street becomes a battle for survival on the open range. Behind the church bell and courthouse walls, powerful men plot to steal his land. Whispers spread: was she chosen for love or only for her size? She holds the key to his future. But what hidden truth will she uncover that could either save them or tear them apart forever? Will this unlikely marriage be their salvation or their downfall? Before we begin, share a piece of your world in the comments. Your city, your energy. It's a powerful thing. Being part of something bigger than ourselves. The stagecoach lurched to a halt in front of Henderson's general store, its wheels kicking up clouds of yellow dust in the harsh Colorado noon sun. The driver called out, "Last stop, Timber Creek," as he set the brake with a metallic screech. One by one, the weary passengers climbed down from the cramped coach, stretching their legs after the long journey through the highlands. Luna Bell gripped her worn carpetbag tightly, taking a deep breath before attempting the steep steps down. Her fingers clutched both her bag and the stiff paper that held her future, the marriage contract she'd carried all the way from Missouri. The coach swayed under her weight as she carefully made her way down. The townsfolk of Timber Creek stopped in their tracks, conversations dying mid-sentence as they took in the sight of her. Luna heard the whisper start, saw the pointing fingers and poorly hidden smirks behind raised hands. Lord above, she's bigger than the wagon itself. A woman, muttered loudly enough for all to hear. Luna kept her chin up, though her cheeks burned. She scanned the gathered faces, looking for the one she'd come to meet, Mr. James Carter. The shopkeeper who'd written such lovely letters about wanting a wife to help run his store. Her eyes found him near the front of the crowd, and her heart sank at the horror written across his thin face. Mr. Carter strode forward, his boots raising little puffs of dust. Without a word, he snatched the marriage contract from Luna's trembling fingers. The sound of ripping paper cut through the afternoon air as he tore it to pieces, his face twisted with shame and anger. The shreds fluttered to the ground like dead leaves as he turned and stormed away, the shop bell jangling as he disappeared inside. Cruel laughter erupted from the saloon porch where several men lounged, their amusement carrying across the street. Luna stood rooted to the spot, her carpetbag suddenly as heavy as her heart. She watched the torn pieces of her dreams dance in the dust at her feet. Unable to move or speak, the sound of heavy footsteps made the wooden sidewalk groan. A shadow fell across Luna, and the laughter died away as suddenly as it had begun. She looked up, and up further still, at the massive figure who had appeared beside her. The man wore a long duster coat, dust-covered but well-made, and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. His red hair and beard caught the sunlight like copper wire. Luna recognized him from whispered descriptions she'd heard on the coach Reds McGrath, the giant rancher who owned the spread north of town. Reds's deep voice rumbled like distant thunder as he addressed the silent crowd. Enough. The single word carried more weight than a sermon. His next words fell like hammer blows in the quiet street. "I'll take her. She birthed my heirs." Luna's vision swam at the edges as she processed his declaration. The world tilted sideways as her knees buckled beneath her. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her as easily as a child's doll. Through the fog closing in around her, Luna was dimly aware of being cradled against a broad chest that smelled of leather and horses. The church bell began to toll, its lonely sound echoing off the mountains as Reds carried her away from the stunned onlookers. Luna's last thought before darkness claimed her was that she'd never imagined her arrival in Timber Creek would end quite like this. When Luna came to, she found herself seated in a straight-backed wooden pew, a concerned face peering down at her. The church interior was cool and dim after the bright sunlight outside. A handkerchief pressed against her forehead smelled faintly of lavender. "There now, dear. Just take slow breaths," said an older woman in a faded blue dress. "I'm Mrs. Peterson, the minister's wife. You've had quite a shock." Luna blinked, her thoughts still fuzzy. Did that really happen out there? You mean Reds McGraw announcing his intention to marry you right there in the street? Yes, indeed. Mrs. Peterson's kind eyes crinkled at the corners, and not a moment too soon, if you ask me. The way some folks behaved out there was nothing short of shameful. Reds himself stood near the altar, his impressive height making the small church seem even smaller. He was in quiet conversation with Reverend Peterson, his deep voice too low to make out the words. The minister nodded several times, making notes. In the church registry, Luna studied her unexpected bridegroom from across the room. Reds McGraw was the largest man she'd ever seen, broad as a barn door with hands like sledgehammers. His red hair and beard were shot through with gray, and lines around his eyes spoke of long days in the sun. Despite his intimidating size, there was something about the way he held himself, a careful gentleness, as if he was always mindful of his own strength. He must have felt her gaze, because he turned then and met her eyes. Luna expected to see pity there, or perhaps the same calculating look she'd grown used to from men who saw her only as breeding stock. Instead, she found something that made her breath catch understanding. Recognition of a kindred spirit who knew what it was to be judged by size alone. The moment stretched between them, quiet as a prayer. Then Reds crossed to where she sat, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. He knelt beside the pew, bringing himself closer to her eye level. "Miss," he said, his voice softer than it had been in the street, "I mean to offer you a proper marriage, a real home, not just charity, but I won't force you. The choice is yours." Luna looked into his weathered face, seeing the pain of old grief etched there alongside his strength. She thought of the torn contract in the dust outside, of the jeering laughter, of all the doors that had closed in her face throughout her life. Here was a door opening instead, perhaps not the one she'd expected, but one that might lead to something true. She squared her shoulders and met his gaze steadily. "I accept, Mr. McGraw." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Reds," he corrected gently. "We're to be married, after all." The ceremony that followed was simple but dignified. Mrs. Peterson had found a lace shawl for Luna to wear over her travel-stained dress, and someone had brought in a small bouquet of wild columbine from the church garden. The afternoon sun slanted through the western windows, painting everything in honey-gold light. As they spoke their vows, Luna's voice trembled only slightly as she promised to honor and cherish. Reds's massive hands were surprisingly gentle as he slipped a plain gold band onto her finger, his first wife's ring. Luna learned later kept safe these many years, when Reverend Peterson pronounced them man and wife. The church bell tolled once more. But this time, instead of loneliness, its sound rang with promise of a new beginning, of two souls finding shelter in each other, of hope rising from the ashes of humiliation like a prayer answered in unexpected ways. Luna felt Reds's strong arm around her shoulders as they stepped out of the church into the lengthening shadows of late afternoon. The street had cleared somewhat, though she could still feel eyes watching from windows and doorways. But with her new husband beside her, the stairs held no power to wound. The town's reaction to their sudden marriage would come later. For now, there was only the quiet comfort of standing together. Two giants who had found in each other something rare and precious, the chance to be seen. Truly seen and accepted for exactly who they were. The wagon wheels creaked as Reds's team of horses pulled them along the dusty road leading north from town. Luna sat rigid beside him on the wooden seat, her carpet bag clutched tightly in her lap. Her mind still swirled with the day's events, the torn contract, the cruel laughter, and then this giant of a man stepping forward to claim her as his bride. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Colorado highlands. Scrub brush and scattered pines dotted the landscape while snow-capped peaks loomed in the distance. A coyote's lonely cry echoed somewhere in the hills. Luna's head still felt fuzzy from her fainting spell. She'd come to briefly during the short wedding ceremony, but exhaustion had claimed her again once they'd left the church. Now she stirred fully awake, mortification flooding through her as she realized she'd been slumped against Reds's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she murmured, straightening quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No harm done," Reds replied, his deep voice matter of fact. His eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. Luna gathered her courage. "Why did you do it?" she asked softly. "Why did you claim me back there?" Reds was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his words were gruff but honest. Couldn't stomach the mockery. Ain't right treating folks that way. He adjusted his grip on the reins. And a man needs family to hold his land. The practical nature of his answer shouldn't have stung, but it did. Luna turned to watch the countryside roll past, blinking back tears. Of course, it hadn't been about her. She was just a convenient solution to his need for an heir. Still, he'd shown her more kindness than anyone else in that town. The sun was setting when they crested a small rise. Below them stretched a sprawling ranch, the main house built of solid logs with several outbuildings scattered nearby. A few cattle grazed in the distant pastures, their forms dark against the golden evening light. "McGraw Ranch," Reds announced, simply guiding the horses down the gentle slope as they drew closer. Luna could see the house was substantial but showed signs of neglect. The porch steps needed mending, and weeds had overtaken what might once have been a kitchen garden. Several lanterns hung from hooks along the walls, their flames barely visible in the gathering dusk. Reds brought the wagon to a stop near the house. Before Luna could attempt to climb down on her own, his strong hands circled her waist, lifting her as easily as a child and setting her gently on her feet. The simple contact made her breath catch. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with such care. "Mind your step," he warned, leading the way up to the porch. The door creaked as he pushed it open, reaching inside to light a lamp. The interior of the house was spacious but desperately needed a woman's touch. Dust covered the furniture and windowsills. Cobwebs decorated the corners, and the air held the musty smell of rooms too long closed up. Still, Luna could see good bones beneath the neglect, solid craftsmanship in the walls and floors. Built to last, Reds guided her to the kitchen, where a heavy wooden table dominated the space. He pulled out a chair for her, then moved to the iron cook stove. "Sit," he said. "You need to eat something." Luna watched as he efficiently kindled a fire in the stove, then pulled supplies from a nearby cupboard. Soon the kitchen filled with the homey smell of warming cornbread and beans. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten since early morning. Red set 2 tin plates on the table, along with cups of water from the pump. The food was simple but hot, and Luna found herself hungrier than she'd realized. She ate slowly, still feeling shaky from the day's events. Across the table, Reds consumed his portion in steady silence. When the meal was finished, he cleared the dishes with unexpected efficiency. Luna started to rise, meaning to help, but he shook his head. "You've had enough for one day. I'll show you where to sleep." He led her up a narrow staircase to the second floor. The master bedroom was large, with a carved wooden bed frame and A small sitting area near the window. Like everything else, it needed a good cleaning, but the linens on the bed looked fresh. "This is your room," Red said from the doorway. "I'll take the parlor downstairs." Luna turned to face him, surprised. "But surely we ain't strangers exactly. But we're not knowing each other proper yet." His voice was gentle, but firm. "Time. Enough for that later, if you're willing." Before she could respond, he'd pulled a spare quilt from a chest and disappeared downstairs. Luna heard his heavy footsteps moving around below. Then silence. She changed into her nightgown with trembling fingers, then slipped between the cool sheets. The bed was soft, though she could smell the musty odor of disuse in the mattress. Outside, coyotes began their nightly chorus, their wild songs drifting across the valley. Luna lay awake for a long time, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of her new home. The house creaked and settled around her, but beneath her uncertainty, she felt something she hadn't expected: safety. The roof above her was solid, the walls strong. And downstairs, a man who'd chosen to protect her slept in the parlor. She didn't love Reds McGraw. How could she, having just met him? And his reasons for marrying her had been more practical than romantic. But as Luna finally drifted toward sleep, she realized that perhaps practicality wasn't such a bad foundation for building something real. He'd offered her dignity when others had only given scorn. Maybe, just maybe, that was enough to start with. The coyotes sang on into the night, their voices now seeming less lonely and more like a wild welcome to her new life on the Colorado. Frontier morning sunlight streamed through the delicate lace curtains, casting intricate patterns across Luna's face. She blinked awake, momentarily confused by the unfamiliar room. The events of yesterday rushed back: the humiliation at the stagecoach, Reds' unexpected intervention, their hasty ceremony. The aroma of strong coffee drifted up from below, mingling with the crisp mountain air that seeped through the window frame. Luna dressed quickly in her traveling clothes, then paused at her carpet bag. After a moment's hesitation, she pulled out her best calico dress, pale blue with tiny white flowers. Whatever this day might bring, she would face it with dignity. Downstairs, she found Reds already dressed in his riding clothes, his duster hanging by the door. He stood at the stove, pouring coffee into 2 tin cups. His massive frame seemed to fill the kitchen, making even the sturdy furniture appear delicate in comparison. "Morning," he said, sliding 1 cup across the table toward her. "Sleep well." Luna nodded, wrapping her fingers around the warm cup. "Yes, thank you." She took a careful sip, the rich brew helping to settle her nerves. Reds cleared his throat. "We need to ride into town. Get the preacher's paper signed proper." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Luna detected an undercurrent of tension. Yesterday's vow won't hold in court without it. Luna's hands tightened on her cup. Of course, their rushed ceremony needed legal documentation. "I understand," she said softly. "I'll change into something more suitable." Upstairs, she donned the calico dress with trembling fingers. The fabric whispered against her skin as she smoothed it down, remembering how she'd packed it weeks ago, imagining a very different kind of wedding day. But there was no use dwelling on might-have-been when she descended the stairs. Reds was waiting by the door. Something flickered in his eyes as he took in her appearance, but he quickly looked away. "Wagon's ready," he said gruffly. Holding the door for her, the morning air was cool and sweet, carrying the scent of sage and pine from the surrounding hills. Reds helped Luna into the wagon with those same careful hands, then climbed up beside her. The wooden seat seemed narrower than yesterday, forcing them to sit closer together. Neither spoke as the horses set off down the dusty road. The silence between them stretched like a physical thing. Luna wanted to speak, to bridge this strange gap, but what could she say? They were strangers bound by necessity, not love. Every attempt at conversation died in her throat. Reds kept his eyes on the road, his broad shoulders tense beneath his cotton shirt. Occasionally, their arms would brush when the wagon hit a rut, sending little jolts of awareness through Luna's body. She found herself stealing glances at his profile, strong and weathered beneath his wide-brimmed hat. The small church came into view as they crested the final hill into town. Its white-painted walls gleamed in the morning sun, the single bell tower reaching toward the cloudless sky. Pastor Wright's buggy was already tied up outside. Reds helped Luna down from the wagon, his touch lingering just a moment longer than necessary. Luna smoothed her skirts, lifting her chin as several townspeople paused in their morning errands to stare. She would not let their judgment touch her today. Inside, the church was cool and quiet, smelling of wood polish and old hymnals. Pastor Wright looked up from his desk, his kind face creasing into a smile. "Good morning," he said, rising to greet them. "I had a feeling I might see you two today." "Need the marriage paper signed?" Red said without preamble. "Make it legal and proper." The pastor nodded, pulling out the necessary documents. "Of course." "Please, sit down." He gestured to the chairs before his desk. Luna sank gratefully into the offered seat, her cheeks burning as she heard whispers and footsteps outside the church windows. She could feel curious eyes peering in, watching this strange drama unfold. Pastor Wright dipped his pen in ink, his movements unhurried and precise. "Marriage is a sacred covenant," he said, looking between them. "One not to be entered into lightly." "I know my mind," Red said firmly, "and my duty." The pastor's gentle gaze turned to Luna. "And you, Miss Bell? Do you enter this union of your own free will?" Luna met his eyes steadily. "I do." The words came out clearer and stronger than she'd expected. She signed her name first, the pen scratching across the paper. Luna Bell McGrath, her new name in black ink, making it real. Red signed next, his large hand careful with the delicate pen. Pastor Wright added his own signature, then sprinkled sand over the wet ink. "By the authority vested in me," he said solemnly, "I now pronounce your union blessed in the eyes of both God and the law." He smiled warmly. "May your life together be filled with His grace." Outside, the morning had grown warmer. Luna blinked. In the bright sunlight, holding the rolled marriage certificate close, Reds touched her elbow lightly. "Need supplies from the mercantile," he said. "Won't take long." The store was cool and dim after the sunshine. Luna could feel the weight of stares as they moved between the shelves, hear the whispers that followed in their wake. She forced herself to walk tall, selecting flour and salt with steady hands, as though she'd been shopping here for years. When they reached the counter, Reds placed a protective hand at the small of her back. "Add whatever else you need," he told her quietly, "for the house." Luna added sugar, coffee, and some basic sewing supplies to their order. The shopkeeper's wife totaled everything with pursed lips, clearly burning with curiosity but not quite daring to ask questions while Reds stood there. Reds paid without comment, then gathered their purchases. His broad shoulders were squared against the gossip as he escorted Luna back to the wagon. She could still feel the touch of his hand on her back. Warm through the calico fabric, the ride home was quieter than the morning journey, but somehow less tense. The marriage certificate rested between them on the seat, making everything official. Real Luna watched the landscape roll past, the familiar route already beginning to feel like home. By the time they reached the ranch, dusk was painting the mountains in shades of purple and deep blue. Reds lit the lamps while Luna put away their purchases, then started supper. The kitchen filled with comfortable sounds, the clatter of pots, the crackle of the stove fire, the quiet movement of two people sharing a space. They ate together at the kitchen table, just as they had the night before. But this time, the silence felt less oppressive. Reds asked about her plans for the house, and Luna spoke of cleaning and organizing. Simple, practical matters, but the conversation flowed more easily than before. Still, neither of them spoke. Of love, their marriage was built on necessity and mutual respect. Perhaps that would have to be enough. Luna glanced at her husband's profile in the lamplight, wondering what thoughts moved behind those quiet eyes. But she didn't ask. Some things, she was learning, took time to reveal themselves. Luna stood in the kitchen, surveying her new domain. The afternoon sun slanted through dusty windows, illuminating a space that had clearly known little care these past years. But beneath the neglect, she saw good bones, a sturdy cast-iron stove, well-seasoned skillets hanging from hooks, shelves of preserved goods that just needed organizing. She rolled up her sleeves and tied on her apron. Time to bring some life. "Back to this kitchen," she murmured, opening cupboards to take stock. There was plenty to work with: a plump chicken from the storehouse, potatoes in the root cellar, flour for biscuits. Her mother had always said a proper meal could heal hearts and homes alike. The kitchen slowly came alive with purpose. Luna hummed softly as she worked, an old hymn her mother used to sing. She rubbed herbs under the chicken's skin, remembering countless Sunday dinners back home. The familiar motions brought comfort: peeling potatoes, mixing biscuit dough, stoking the stove fire to just the right heat. Soon the aroma of baking bread filled the house. Luna heard heavy footsteps on the porch and turned to see Reds in the doorway, still dusty from barn chores. He stood frozen, nostrils flaring slightly as he breathed in the homey scents. Something flickered across his face: pain, memory, longing, before he quickly masked it. "Supper will be ready soon," Luna said gently, pretending not to notice his reaction. "There's wash water in the basin if you'd like to clean up." Reds nodded wordlessly and disappeared down the hall. Luna heard splashing from the washroom as she pulled golden brown biscuits from the oven. She set the table carefully, using the good dishes she'd found in the cupboard. They were dusty but unbroken, waiting all this time to be used again. When Reds returned, clean and dressed in a fresh shirt, he paused at the sight of the properly set table. Luna had found a tablecloth, smoothed out the wrinkles, and set out to places with care. The chicken glistened golden brown in its roasting pan, surrounded by potatoes and carrots. A basket of steaming biscuits waited nearby. They sat down together, the silence heavy with unspoken things. Luna began to hum again, soft and low, as she served the food. The gentle melody seemed to ease some of the tension from Reds's broad shoulders. "This is mighty fine cooking," he said gruffly, after several bites. "Thank you," Luna replied. "I've always loved cooking for others. Makes a house feel more like home." Something shifted in Reds's expression at the word home, but he kept eating steadily. Luna maintained her quiet humming, letting the music fill the spaces between them. The hymn spoke of peace and comfort, things this house had clearly been lacking for too long. When the meal was done, Luna stood to clear the dishes. "I'll wash up," she said firmly when Red started to protest. "Though you're welcome to dry if you'd like." To her surprise, he picked up a dish towel without argument. They fell into an easy rhythm, Luna washing, Red's drying, and putting things away. His movements were careful, almost gentle, with the dishes. "Been years," he said suddenly. So quietly she almost missed it, since anyone set this table proper. He ran the towel over a plate, not meeting her eyes. Forgot how nice it could be. Luna's heart ached at the admission, but she kept her voice light. "Well, we'll just have to make it a regular thing then, won't we?" After the kitchen was clean, Luna decided to explore the rest of the house. The parlor was her first stop, illuminated by the last rays of sunset through lace curtains. A piano stood against one wall, its wood dulled with dust but still beautiful. When she lifted the lid, the keys were yellowed with age, clearly long untouched. Bookshelves lined another wall, filled mostly with well-worn Bibles and hymn books. Luna ran her fingers along their spines, noting the different sizes, some sized for adult hands, others clearly meant for children. Her breath caught when she spotted something in a corner, a small cloth doll forgotten behind a chair. Its dress was faded, but once must have been bright blue. Its yarn hair carefully braided. Luna heard Reds's heavy tread behind her, and carefully moved away from the doll without drawing attention to it. The grief on his face was plain enough without her adding to it. Some wounds needed time before they could be acknowledged. "Would you like to sit on the porch for a spell?" she asked instead, the evenings cooling off nicely. Reds nodded, seemingly grateful for the suggestion. They settled into the wooden chairs that faced the yard, listening to the evening sounds of the ranch. Crickets chirped in the grass. A gentle breeze rustled the cottonwood leaves, and somewhere in the distance, a whippoorwill called. The peace that settled between them felt fragile but real. Luna kept her humming soft, matching the cricket song. Reds's breathing slowly steadied beside her, some of the day's tension easing from his frame. They didn't speak, didn't need to, really. Sometimes silence could be its own kind of healing. As the stars began appearing in the darkening sky, Luna sensed a subtle shift in the air between them. Reds was no longer looking at her as just a convenient solution to his problems, a name on a contract. Her presence had brought something back to this home: warmth, music, the simple comfort of shared meals and quiet evenings. It wasn't love. Not yet, but it was a beginning. Luna watched the first fireflies emerge, their lights dancing in the gathering dusk. She didn't need to fill this moment with words. Some changes happened slowly, like the sunset painting the sky in gentle colors. All she needed to do was be present, patient, and kind. The rest would come in its own time. Dawn painted the eastern sky in soft pinks and golds as Luna stoked the kitchen stove to life. She had risen before first light, determined to have a proper breakfast ready for Reds and his ranch hands. The smell of coffee soon mingled with the sizzle of thick-cut ham in the cast-iron skillet. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, mixing biscuit dough and stirring gravy. The kitchen windows slowly brightened as she worked, revealing the ranch yard coming to life. Men emerged from the bunkhouse, heading to the barn for morning chores. Luna could hear their low voices, curious murmurs about the new mistress of the ranch. She was setting platters of steaming food on the long table. When boots scraped on the porch, the door creaked open, and 5 weather-worn cowboys filed in behind. Reds, their hats clutched awkwardly in their hands. They stood uncertain, eyeing Luna and the laden table with equal wariness. "Well, don't just stand there letting the flies in," Luna said cheerfully. "Food's getting cold." The men shuffled to their seats, some casting sideways glances at their boss. Reds took his place at the head of the table, giving Luna a slight nod as she poured coffee into tin cups. "Ain't used to such fancy victuals," one of the younger hands ventured, reaching for a biscuit. "Reckon the boss wanted himself a proper-sized cook," another muttered under his breath. But not quietly enough. Luna's hand stilled briefly as she poured coffee, but then she smiled. "Well now, seems to me a man who'd turned down good cooking on account of the cook's size ain't got the sense God gave a jackrabbit." Her tone was light, but her eyes held a glint of steel. A few of the men choked back surprised laughs. Reds's face darkened, but before he could speak, Luna continued, "Besides, I figure it takes a woman of substance to handle substantial matters. Pass the gravy, if you please." The tension broke. Even the hand hood made the remark ducked his head, a reluctant smile tugging at his mouth. Reds's glare ensured no more comments would be forthcoming. But Luna had already won the first skirmish. Over the next few days, Luna proved herself far more than just a cook. When she noticed torn shirts in the mending pile, she set up her sewing basket on the porch, working efficiently in the good light. The stitches were neat and strong, the patches carefully matched. Soon the hands were bringing her their worn, gear-frayed saddlebags, split seams, loose buttons. "Much obliged, ma'am," they'd mumble, clearly unused to such attention to their comfort. Luna organized the storehouse too, taking inventory of supplies and noting what needed restocking. She found ways to stretch provisions without sacrificing quality, making sure no one went hungry. Her laughter often rang out across the yard as she went about her tasks, somehow making work seem lighter for everyone. One evening, as the men gathered around the cook fire after supper, Luna joined them with her mending basket. The talk had turned. 2 ghost stories, each hand trying to outdo the others with tales of frontier haunts. "That ain't nothing," Luna said, threading her needle. "You ought to hear about the ghost bride of Miller's Creek back home in Missouri." The men fell silent, attention caught. Even Reds, sitting apart in his usual spot, tilted his head to listen. Luna's voice took on a storyteller's rhythm as she worked. "Now, this happened when my grandmother was a girl, mind you. There was this young woman, set to marry the richest farmer in 3 counties. Her needle flashed in the firelight as she spun the tale, building tension with each stitch. The hands leaned forward, caught up in the story. When Luna reached the climax, the bride's revenge on her faithless groom, several men actually jumped. She finished with a flourish, tying off her thread as the story concluded. "Lord Almighty," breathed the youngest hand. "That give me shivers." From his spot in the shadows, Reds couldn't quite hide his smile. Luna caught his eye briefly, her own eyes twinkling, before she gathered her mending and bid the men good night. After that evening, there was a marked change in how the hands treated Luna. Gone was the awkward uncertainty, replaced by genuine respect. They touched their hats when she passed, held doors open, and always addressed her properly as Mrs. McGrath. Later that night, as Luna and Red sat on the porch in their usual evening quiet, he spoke up. "They like you." His voice was gruff but carried a note of approval. Luna's needles clicked softly as she knitted by lamplight. "They like a full belly and a kind word," she replied simply. "Same as any man." Reds grunted in agreement, and they fell back into comfortable silence. The crickets sang, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage from the hills. Something had shifted between them, strengthening like a well-made seam, unspoken, but holding firm. The ranch was changing too, coming back to life under Luna's care. The house no longer felt empty, and the bunkhouse rang with laughter more often than not. Even the hardest hands found themselves softening around her. Drawn in by her easy manner and ready wit, Luna had done more than earn their respect. She'd created a place for herself, stitch by stitch and meal by meal, until she fit as naturally as if she'd always been there. And if Reds watched her more closely these days, something warming in his stern expression, well, that was between him and the evening stars. A week passed swiftly under the Colorado sun. Early Sunday morning, Luna stood before her bedroom mirror, carefully pinning a powder blue ribbon to her best bonnet. The silk had traveled all the way from Missouri in her carpet bag, saved for special occasions. She smoothed her dark calico dress, Kay taking extra care with the lace collar she'd starched yesterday. Outside, wagon wheels crunched on gravel as Reds brought the team around. Luna heard him checking the harness, his low voice steadying the horses. He'd put on his good black coat, she noticed through the window, though his hat remained dusty from ranch work. The morning air held autumn's first crisp edge as Luna settled onto the wagon seat beside Reds. He clicked to the horses, and they set off down the rutted road toward town. Prairie grass rippled gold in the breeze, and meadowlarks called from fence posts along the way. "Been a spell since I attended regular," Reds admitted, breaking their usual comfortable silence. His big hands were steady on the reins, but Luna sensed tension in his shoulders. "The Lord welcomes all who come," she said softly. no matter how long they've been away. Reds merely nodded, his expression hidden beneath his hat brim. As they approached town, more wagons and riders joined the road, all headed for the white clapboard church. Its simple steeple rose above the other buildings, bell already tolling across the valley. Luna held her head high, though she felt the stares and heard the whispers rippling through the crowd, gathering on the church steps. "Look there, McGraw. Actually brought her to service. Bold as brass, ain't they?" "Well, I never." Reds's jaw tightened, but he helped Luna down from the wagon with gentle courtesy. Together they climbed the wooden steps, his massive frame making the boards creak. The congregation parted before them, some drawing back as if their size might be catching Dot inside. The little church glowed with morning sunlight streaming through plain glass windows. Pastor Wright stood at the door, greeting his flock. His weathered face brightened genuinely at the sight of them. "Brother McGraw, Sister Luna, welcome, welcome. My heart is glad to see you both." He clasped their hands warmly, his voice carrying clearly to the watching congregation. They found seats near the back, the wooden pew, groaning slightly as they settled. Luna noticed several people shift away, leaving empty space around them. She focused instead on the fresh wildflowers decorating the altar, breathing in their sweet fragrance mixed with lamp oil and old hymnals. Pastor Wright took his place behind the simple pulpit, his Bible worn but well-loved. Today, he began. We turn to the book of Ruth and the story of two outsiders whom God blessed with belonging. Luna sat straighter, hope warming her heart, as the pastor spoke of Ruth's courage in a strange land, and Boaz's kindness to one deemed foreign. She felt eyes occasionally turning their way. The message was clear to any with ears to hear. When time came for hymns, Luna opened her book with the others. The first notes of Amazing Grace rose from the pump organ, and Luna lifted her voice in harmony. Clear and deep, her singing filled the small sanctuary, soaring to the rafters with practiced skill. Several heads turned in surprise by the second verse. Other voices joined more confidently, blending with hers. Luna caught Reds watching her, something soft and wondering in his expression. She'd never told him about the years she'd spent in her home church's choir, finding joy despite the townspeople's cruel remarks about her size. As the final notes faded, Luna noticed several of the congregation's faces had softened. When service ended, most still hurried past, but Mrs. Wilson, a widow who lived at the edge of town, approached with a covered dish. I brought a gooseberry pie," she said hesitantly. "Thought you might enjoy it after your Sunday dinner." Luna accepted the offering with genuine warmth. "Why, thank you kindly. I've been missing fresh fruit, something fierce." Her smile encouraged Mrs. Wilson to linger a moment longer. Perhaps you might share your sweet roll recipe sometime. The ones you brought to the general store last week looked magnificent." "I'd be delighted," Luna replied, her heart lifting at this small bridge of friendship. Their moment of connection shattered as raised voices carried from outside. Luna and Mrs. Wilson hurried to the church steps where a small crowd had gathered. In the center stood Reds, towering over a well-dressed man whose fancy suit marked him as a stranger to ranch work. "Family or no, you'll lose that ranch to debt," the man was saying, his smooth voice carrying clear warning. "The bank won't wait forever, McGrath." Luna recognized him now, Mr. Harlan, the banker who'd recently arrived from Denver. His elegant clothes couldn't quite hide the predatory gleam in his eyes. "Best ride on, Harlan." Reds's quiet rumble held danger. "My business ain't your Sunday concern." The banker's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Everything in this territory is my concern." He tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy and strolled away, leaving tension crackling in his wake. The drive home seemed longer than usual. Reds stayed silent, his thoughts clearly troubled. The prairie wind caught at Luna's bonnet. Ribbons and carried the scent of sage, but also an undercurrent of worry. "Is there something wrong with the ranch?" she finally asked, her voice gentle. "Something I should know about." Red's hands tightened on the reins. "Nothing you need to worry on," he said gruffly. Though unease flickered in his expression, Luna wanted to press further, but held her tongue. Trust, like friendship, had to grow in its own time. She turned her face to the wind instead, watching red-tailed hawks circle against the endless blue sky. But her mind kept returning to the banker's threats and the shadow they'd cast over their tentative Sunday peace. The wagon rolled onward toward home, wheels squeaking a rhythm that matched the questions turning in Luna's heart. The prairie stretched, vast around them, beautiful but demanding like love itself, she thought, requiring courage to cultivate and faith to sustain. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the ranch house windows as Luna explored the quiet rooms. She'd been meaning to do a proper cleaning, wanting to bring warmth back to the silent spaces. In the study, dust motes danced in sunbeams as she ran her fingers along book spines on cedar shelves. A small leather volume caught her eye. Unlike the other books, this one was tucked away behind a wooden box. Luna carefully pulled it free, her heart catching when she saw it was a child's Bible, its pages well worn with love. Opening the cover, she found delicate handwriting in faded ink to Emily McGrath on her 7th birthday. "May God's word light your path always. Love, Mama, Emily McGrath." Luna's hands trembled slightly. She'd wondered about the doll in the corner, the silent piano, the extra play settings gathering dust in the china cabinet. Now she knew Reds had once had a family. The sound of boots on the porch made her start. She quickly returned the Bible to its hiding place, her mind churning with questions she wasn't sure she should ask. Reed EZ came in from the evening chores, his massive frame filling the doorway. "Stew's almost ready," Luna said, moving toward the kitchen. But something in her expression must have given her away, because he paused, studying her face. "You found something," he said. Not a question. Luna nodded slowly. The Bible, Emily's Bible. Reds went very still, like a man bracing for a blow. The kitchen clock ticked loud in the silence. Finally, he sank into his chair at the table, suddenly looking older than his years. "Reckon you ought to know," he said, his voice rough. "Being as you're here now," Luna ladled stew into bowls, setting them down gently. She waited, giving him space to find the words. "Emily was 8 when the diphtheria came through," he began, staring at his hands. "My Sarah, my wife, she nursed her day and night. But it wasn't enough. Lost them both within a week of each other." Luna's heart ached at the raw pain in his voice. How long ago? 5 years this winter. Red's fingers traced a pattern on the wooden table, buried them up on the north ridge where the wildflowers grow thick in spring. Buried my heart with them too, I reckon. Haven't set foot in that church since, till today. Tears welled in Luna's eyes. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his large, calloused one. "God didn't leave you," she said softly. Reds jerked his hand away as if burned. His chair scraped back as he stood. "God took everything that mattered," he said, voice harsh. "Don't talk to me about his mercy." He strode out onto the porch, letting the screen door slam behind him. Luna watched through the window as he stood in the gathering dusk, shoulders rigid with grief that had never properly healed. Later, that night, after Reds had gone to his cot in the parlor, Luna knelt beside her bed. The moonlight spilled silver through her window, and somewhere in the distance a coyote called lonely into the dark. "Lord," she whispered, "help me understand how to reach him. Show me how to help heal his heart." Her tears fell silent, unclasped. "Hands, and protect this ranch, Father. Something's coming. I can feel it. Give us strength for whatever lies ahead." Meanwhile, in town, lamplight burned late in the bank office. Silas Harlan sat at his polished desk, sharing whiskey with a well-dressed stranger. Papers were spread between them: deeds, contracts, surveys of the territory. "McGraw's land is the key," Harlan said, tapping a map with manicured fingers. "His water rights control the whole valley. Once we have those, the other ranchers will fall in line." The stranger, a cattle syndicate agent from Denver, nodded thoughtfully. "And you're certain about this deed?" Harlan's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I had it drawn up myself. The dates, the signatures, everything looks perfectly legal. By the time McGraw proves otherwise, it'll be too late." "What about the wife?" the agent asked. "This mail-order bride of his, could she be trouble? That fat woman?" Harlan laughed. "She's nothing. It's just a desperate creature who latched onto the first man who'd have her. She won't interfere." They clinked glasses, satisfaction glinting in their eyes as they planned their strike. Outside the bank's windows, the town's lamps were going out one by one, darkness creeping in like a tide. Back at the ranch, Luna stood at her window, watching the same darkness gather over the prairie. The house creaked softly around her, holding its secrets. Somewhere below, she could hear Red's heavy footsteps as he made one last check of the property before bed. A cool breeze carried the scent of sage through her window. Luna touched the glass, thinking of Emily and Sarah McGrath. Two souls she'd never meet, but whose absence shaped everything about this place. She thought of Red's pain, buried deep but still bleeding after all these years. "Lord," she whispered again, "help me be strong enough for whatever's coming." She didn't know why, but her heart told her they would need all the strength they could gather. And soon, the ranch house settled into night, its inhabitants each alone with their thoughts. Luna with her prayers, Red's with his memories. While miles away in town, shadows gathered like storm clouds on the horizon. The invitation arrived on a dusty Tuesday afternoon, carried by young Tommy Fletcher on his spotted pony. Luna was hanging sheets on the line when she saw him riding up, waving a cream-colored envelope. "Mrs. McGraw." Tommy called out, his freckled face bright with excitement. "Ma says to give you this proper like." He handed over the envelope with careful ceremony. Luna wiped her hands on her apron before accepting it. Inside was a handwritten note from Sarah Fletcher, inviting them to the barn dance that Saturday night. The Fletchers' spread bordered Red's land to the east, and their barn dances were apparently a tradition in these parts. That evening, as Red's came in from the corrals, Luna set an extra fine supper on the table: roast chicken with dumplings. His favorite. She waited until he'd taken a few appreciative bites before mentioning the invitation. "Barn dance." Red's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Those gatherings ain't for me." "The Fletchers are our neighbors," Luna said gently. "And Sarah Fletcher made a point to invite us proper." Red's pushed his plate back slightly. "Haven't been to such things since." He didn't finish, but Luna knew he was thinking of Sarah and Emily. "Perhaps it's time," Luna suggested, her voice soft. "We're part of this community now, you and I." Red stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Said no. He strode out onto the porch, leaving his meal half finished. Luna sighed, but didn't give up. Over the next few days, she mentioned it casual-like how the autumn air was perfect for dancing. How she'd heard the Fletcher boys played fine fiddle music. She caught Red's watching her sometimes, his expression thoughtful. Finally, on Friday evening, he cleared his throat roughly. "Reckon we could stop by for a spell." Luna's heart lifted, but she kept her voice steady. "I'd like that." Saturday evening painted the sky in deep purples and golds as they rode toward the Fletcher place. Luna had put on her best dress, a deep blue calico that brought out her eyes. She'd even added a touch of ribbon to her bonnet. Reds wore his good black coat, though he tugged at the collar like it was choking him. The Fletcher barn glowed with warmth. Lanterns hanging from every rafter. Music spilled out the wide doors, fiddles, and a guitar, with someone keeping time on a washboard. The yard was full of wagons and horses, and the sound of laughter carried on the evening air. As they approached, Luna felt the familiar wave of whispers. She saw women nudging each other, heard the low murmurs about their size. But she held her head high, smiling and nodding as they entered the barn. Sarah Fletcher hurried over, her round face beaming. "Luna, Mr. McGraw, we're so pleased you came." She drew Luna toward a group of ranch wives, chattering about quilting and preserves. Reds found a spot against the wall, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather face a stampede than join the festivities. Luna kept an eye on him while she visited, with the women sharing recipes and gentle gossip. She laughed at their stories, and gradually, Say noticed the suspicious looks softening. The music shifted to a waltz, slow and sweet. Luna watched couples move across the swept wooden floor, skirts swishing, boots tapping. She wasn't expecting anything, so her heart nearly stopped when she felt a presence beside her. Red stood there, his massive frame casting a shadow in the lamplight. His hand extended toward her, rough and calloused. "Might we?" they asked. Voice gruff but gentle. The whole barn seemed to hold its breath as Luna placed her hand in his. Reds led her onto the floor with surprising grace. His arms circled her waist, and then they were moving together, turning slow and steady to the music. Luna had always been conscious of her size, but in Red's arms she felt light as a feather. He guided her surely, his steps certain despite his bulk. They moved like they danced together for years, like their bodies had always known this rhythm. The other dancers drew back slightly, making space. Luna was aware of eyes on them, but for once the looks held wonder instead of mockery. She caught glimpses of smiling faces as they turned, Sarah Fletcher wiping a tear, old Mr. Jenkins nodding approvingly. The fiddles drew out one last sweet note, and they came to a gentle stop. For a moment, silence held. Then applause broke out, warm and genuine. Luna felt her cheeks flush, but Reds kept hold of her hand as they moved to the side. They stayed a while longer, sharing cake and coffee with neighbors who seemed eager to chat now. Luna noticed Reds actually talking with John Fletcher about cattle prices. His usual scowl softened. The moon was high when they finally started home, their wagon rolling quiet through the autumn night. Stars scattered like diamond dust across the sky, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage. "It's been a long time," Reds said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. He paused, searching for words. "Reckon I'd forgotten how to smile." Luna's heart swelled with tenderness. "Now you remember," she said simply. They rode on toward home. The quiet between them different now, warm and full of possibility. Luna felt something had shifted tonight, like a key turning in a long rusted lock. In the darkness, her hand found his on the wagon seat, and this time, Reds didn't pull away. The ranch house came into view, its windows dark against the starlit sky. But as they drew closer, Luna thought the place looked less lonely somehow, more like a home waiting for their return, holding the promise of more smiles, more dances, more moments of joy yet to come. Reds helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist just a moment longer than necessary. Together they walked toward the house, their shadows merging in the moonlight, while somewhere in the distance a whippoorwill called sweet and clear across the prairie night. The autumn days settled into a comfortable rhythm at the McGraw Ranch. Each morning, Luna rose before dawn to stir the cook stove to life, the kitchen windows slowly brightening with prairie sunrise. She'd learned how each ranch hand liked his eggs, which ones needed extra coffee, would appreciate seconds of biscuits and gravy. Reds began lingering longer at breakfast, his usual hurry to the corrals, giving way to quiet moments watching Luna move about the kitchen. Sometimes she'd catch him hiding a smile behind his coffee cup, especially when she teased the younger hands about their appetites. This particular evening, the kitchen was warm with the scent of baking pies. Luna had spent the afternoon rolling out crusts and peeling apples, humming old hymns as she worked. The ranch hands caught the sweet smell drifting out to the barn, and more than a few found excuses to pass by the kitchen window. "Smells like heaven itself," young Tommy declared. Sniffing hopefully at the doorway, Luna laughed, wiping flour from her hands. "Heaven's got better things than my pies, Tommy, but these'll do for earthly purposes." As twilight settled over the prairie, Luna carried the pies out to where the men had built up the cook fire. The flames painted orange light across weather-worn faces as the hands gathered round, plates eager. "Now that's what I call proper pie," old Joe announced, savoring his first bite. "Reminds me of my mama's cooking back in Tennessee." Others chimed in with their own memories of home cooking, and soon stories were flowing as freely as the coffee. Luna settled on a log near the fire, enjoying their tales of cattle drives and frontier adventures. When Reds joined them, moving quiet as a shadow despite his size, the men stiffened slightly. But Luna saw how her husband's presence had changed, less threatening, more paternal. He lowered himself onto the log beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth against the evening chill. "Tell them about that traveling preacher in Missouri," Red said, surprising everyone. "The one with the possessed mule." Luna's eyes sparkled. In the firelight, "Lord, I'd nearly forgotten that tale." She launched into the story, her voice rich with humor as she described the hapless preacher trying to deliver a sermon while his mule caused chaos in the churchyard. The ranch hands roared with laughter, and even Reds chuckled, a sound that had become less rare these days. Luna noticed how the men glanced at their boss with something like pride, as if pleased to see him joining in their fellowship. Later, after the hands had drifted off to their bunks and the fire had died to embers, Luna and Reds walked back to the house together. Stars dusted the vast prairie sky, and a cool breeze carried the scent of sage and distant rain in the parlor. Luna began her nightly routine of straightening up, but Reds's voice stopped her. "Sit with me a spell." She settled beside him on the worn sofa, watching as he struggled with something internal. His huge hands twisted together, then stilled. "Been thinking," he said slowly, "about what the pastor said last Sunday. About how the Lord can make broken things whole again." Luna held her breath, not daring to interrupt this moment. Reds closed his eyes, and to her amazement, began to pray aloud. "Lord God," his voice was rough with emotion, "I ain't talked to you proper. Since you took Sarah and Emily, figured you'd turned your back on me. But," he drew a shaky breath, "I reckon I was wrong. You sent Luna here, sent her to heal a broken man, and I'm grateful, Lord. More grateful than I got words to say." Luna's eyes filled with tears. She reached for his hand, clasping it tight. Red squeezed back, but something held him back from saying more. The moment hung between them, full of unspoken feeling. The thunder of hoofbeats shattered the silence. Reds was on his feet instantly, hand going to the rifle above the fireplace, but the rider's voice called out clear and familiar. "Mr. McGrath. Message from town." It was young Billy from the telegraph office, his horse lathered from hard riding. Red stepped onto the porch, Luna close behind. Billy's face was grave as he handed over a telegram. "Mr. Harlan said to deliver this straight away, sir. Said it was urgent legal business." Reds unfolded the paper slowly, moving into the lamplight to read. Luna watched his face change, saw the muscles in his jaw tighten and his shoulders set like iron. "What is it?" she asked softly. "Denver court. Red's voice was dangerously quiet. Harlan's filed claim against the ranch. Says the original deed ain't valid. Some nonsense about improper registration back in '68. His massive hands crumpled the telegram. He's trying to steal my land through the courts. Luna felt cold, despite the mild evening she'd seen. The banker watching them in town, his eyes calculating. Now she understood the threat behind his polite smiles. "We'll fight it," she said firmly. "There must be a way legal papers take money," Red's cut in. "Money we ain't got, with the drought-cutting cattle prices." His face was shadowed, all the joy of earlier destroyed. "Harlan knows that. He's been planning this, waiting till we're vulnerable." Billy shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. "There's talk in town," he offered hesitantly, "about the cattle syndicate buying up water rights. Some folks saying Mr. Harlan's working with them." Reds nodded grimly. "Appreciate the warning, boy. Best get on home now." They watched Billy ride away into the darkness. The night seemed colder now, the stars less friendly. Luna could feel Reds withdrawing into himself, building walls against this new pain. "We'll find a way," she repeated, touching his arm. Together, he didn't answer, just stood staring out at the dark prairie, the crumpled telegram still clutched in his fist. All the progress of these gentle days, the laughter, the prayer, the almost spoken love seemed suddenly fragile against this threat to everything he'd built. Luna looked up at his rigid profile, her heart aching. She'd found home here, found purpose, and maybe even love. She wouldn't let Harlan destroy that without a fight. But watching Reds' face in the lamplight, she saw the fear beneath his anger. Fear that once again, everything he cared for might be torn away. The morning sun cast long shadows across Main Street as Red's McGraw's wagon rolled into town. His massive frame seemed even more imposing than usual. Tension visible in every line of his body as he made his way toward the courthouse. Luna had offered to come, but he'd insisted she stay at the ranch. Wanting to spare her from more town gossip, the courthouse stood austere and silent, its wooden steps creaking under Reds' weight. Inside, the clerk informed him that Judge Patterson wouldn't return from circuit court for 3 more days. Reds' jaw tightened, 3 days of waiting while Harlan's schemes moved forward as he stepped back onto the street. He noticed how conversations stopped, how people turned to whisper behind raised hands. The sound carried on the morning air, sharp as prairie thorns. At the Mercantile, Mrs. Potter was holding court among the morning shoppers. "Well, I heard it straight from Mr. Harlan himself," she declared, not bothering to lower her voice as Reds passed. "Said McGraw only took that poor woman to secure his claim on the land. Needs heirs, you see, or the property goes to his late wife's family. Shameful," another woman clucked. "Using a person that way." Reds' hands clenched into fists, but he kept walking. Fighting gossips would only make things worse. Still, the words followed him down the street like angry wasps. Double quotes. Married her for breeding stock, nothing more. Never even courted proper. About as romantic as buying a broodmare. Near the bank, Harlan stood on the boardwalk in his fine suit, watching Reds with calculating eyes. When their gazes met, the banker tipped his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "Having trouble with those deed papers, McGraw?" Harlan's voice dripped false sympathy. "Shame about that. Though I suppose that's why you rushed into marriage, hoping an heir might strengthen your claim." Reds took one menacing step forward. But Harlan didn't flinch. "Careful now," the banker smiled. "Wouldn't want to add assault charges to your troubles." Back at the ranch, Luna had thrown herself into work, trying to keep her mind off Reds' mission to town. She was hanging fresh laundry when she heard riders approaching, not from the direction of town, but from the neighboring Thompson place. Mary Thompson and her daughter Jenny reined up by the fence. their faces pinched with something between pity and embarrassment. "Luna, we felt we should tell you," Mary began awkwardly. "The talk in town." Luna's hand stilled on the sheet she was hanging. "What talk?" Jenny burst out, unable to contain herself. "They're saying awful things. That Mr. McGraw only married you because he needs an heir to keep his land. That it wasn't about love at all. Just breeding." The girl blushed furiously. Luna felt the blood drain from her face. The words confirmed every secret fear she'd carried since that first day when Reds had declared she birthed my heirs in front of the whole town. "Mr. Harlan's spreading it everywhere," Mary added. "Says Reds admitted it to him straight out." Luna's fingers clutched the damp sheet until her knuckles went white. "Thank you for telling me," she managed. I need to finish this washing." The Thompsons exchanged worried glances before riding away. Luna stood motionless by the laundry line, the prairie wind whipping the sheets around her like pale ghosts. All the tender moments of the past weeks, the shared meals, the barn dance, Reds's prayer of gratitude suddenly seemed hollow. Had it all been calculation? It's just a desperate man using whatever tool came to hand to save his land. When Reds returned that evening, Luna had already taken her supper to her room. He found his own plate waiting on the kitchen table. The house, unnaturally quiet after weeks of warmth and conversation. "Luna," he called, mounting the stairs. "I'm tired," came her muffled response. "Please, just leave me be." But Reds had never been one to leave trouble unfaced. He knocked gently on her door. "Something's wrong. Talk to me." The door opened slightly. Luna stood there, her eyes red-rimmed but her spine straight. "I know why you married me," she said flatly. "The whole town knows." "Luna, no, you needed an heir to secure your claim on the land." Her voice trembled slightly. "That's all I am to you. Insurance against Harlan's schemes." A brood mare, they're saying in town. That ain't true." Reds's denial was fierce, but Luna shook her head. "Isn't it? Wasn't that what you announced to everyone that first day? She birthed my heirs. Those were your words." Reds, "Not I'll love her or I'll cherish her. Just what I could provide. I was trying to protect you by using me." Luna's eyes filled with fresh tears. I thought maybe something real was growing between us, but it was all just practical, wasn't it? A business arrangement with a woman big enough to bear strong sons." "Luna, please." Reds reached for her, but she stepped back. "I need to be alone tonight." She closed the door firmly, leaving him standing in the darkened hallway. Reds stumbled down the stairs and out to the barn, his chest tight with anger at Harlan, at the gossips, but mostly at himself. Because Luna's words had struck too close to truth. He had married her for practical reasons that first day. But somewhere along the way, watching her bring life and laughter back to his home, something deeper had taken root. Now he'd lost her trust before he'd found the courage to speak of love in the barn. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the walls. Red struck the stall door with his fist, making the whole structure shudder. A horse whinnied in protest. "Sorry, girl," he muttered, pressing his forehead against the rough wood. "Seems I got a talent for frightening females." Upstairs in her room, Luna knelt beside her bed, tears falling onto clasped hands. "Lord," she whispered, "am I worth nothing more than my size? Is that all anyone will ever see in me?" A big woman good for breeding. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs. I thought maybe Red saw more. Saw me. But I was just convenient, the right tool at the right time. The house that had slowly filled with warmth and hope now lay silent as a tomb. In the barn, Red slumped against the stall door, remembering Luna's laughter, her gentle ways with The ranch hands, her quiet strength. He'd been a fool to let Harlan's poison destroy what they were building. In her room, Luna tucked herself into bed, feeling smaller than she'd ever felt in her life. The coyotes howled in the distance, their cries as lonely as her heart between house and barn. The night wind sighed, carrying the fragments of broken trust like autumn leaves. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ranch yard when Harlan's buggy appeared on the horizon. Luna watched from the kitchen window as the banker's horse kicked up dust along the approach. Her hands, busy with breakfast dishes, stilled at the sight. Red stood from the table, his coffee going cold. "Stay inside," he said quietly, but Luna dried her hands and followed him to the porch. Whatever was coming, she wouldn't let him face it alone, even if doubts still clouded things between them. Harlan pulled up in his polished buggy, looking out of place against the weathered ranch buildings. His suit was crisp despite the dusty ride, his smile sharp as a new razor. "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" Harlan called out, stepping down with a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. "Shame to spoil it with business." "State your piece and go," Reds growled. Harlan's smile didn't waver. He pulled papers from his portfolio with a flourish. "Notice of foreclosure proceedings, McGraw. Unless you can produce $20,000 within 30 days, the bank will take possession of this property." 20,000. Luna gasped. It was an impossible sum for any rancher. The original deed was never properly filed. Harlan continued smoothly. "Makes your claim questionable. Of course, if you'd care to sell now, we could avoid messy legal proceedings." Reds's massive hands clenched into fists. "This land's been in my family 20 years. We filed every paper proper." "Did you?" Harlan's eyebrows rose. "Perhaps you'd like to prove that in court. Though I hear Denver judges aren't particularly sympathetic to irregular marriage arrangements." Luna felt the sting of his words, but kept her chin high. "Get off my land," Red said, his voice deadly quiet. 30 days, McGraw." Harlan laid the papers on the porch railing. Tick-tock. He climbed back into his buggy, adding over his shoulder, "Give my regards to your substantial bride." They watched him drive away, the morning sun gleaming off his buggy's polished wheels. When the dust settled, Red snatched up the papers, his face dark with fury. "He's lying," Luna said softly. "There must be a way to prove it." Reds didn't answer. He stormed into the house, papers crumpling in his grip. Luna heard him in his study, cursing as he dug through old files. The day passed in tense silence. Ranch hands came and went, sensing trouble, but knowing better than to ask. Luna prepared meals that went barely touched, her mind churning over Harlan's threats. As evening approached, she made a decision. While Red sat brooding at the kitchen table, drinking his 4th cup of black coffee, Luna lit a lantern and climbed the stairs to the study. The room was cluttered with 20 years of ranch business receipts, contracts, letters spilling from drawers and boxes. Luna took a deep breath and began to search. She worked methodically, starting with the oldest papers. Her fingers traced over faded ink, deciphering cramped handwriting by lantern light. Birth records, death certificates, cattle, sales. She found Emily's Bible again, tucked among letters from Reds's late wife, Sarah. The sight made her pause. Remember her own uncertain place here, but she pushed aside those feelings. The ranch needed saving, whatever lay between her and Red's. Hours passed. Luna's back ached from bending over papers, but she kept reading. She found Sarah's wedding certificate, property tax records, old maps with boundary marks. Each document told a piece of the ranch's story. From below came the scrape of Reds's chair, his heavy tread on the stairs. He appeared in the doorway, watching her work. "You should sleep," he said gruffly. Luna didn't look up from the papers spread before her. Someone needs to fight for this land. Ain't your fight. Now she did look up, meeting his eyes steadily. I'm your wife, aren't I? Even if only for practical reasons. Reds flinched at that, but didn't deny it. He stood watching as she returned to her careful sorting. The lantern flame flickered, casting dancing shadows on the wall. Outside, an owl called into the darkness. Luna's fingers moved from paper to paper, searching for anything that might help. She found letters between Reds's father and the original landowner, discussing terms of sale, railroad documents marking the property boundaries, a copy of the first cattle brand registration. Reds opened his mouth to object, but something in her eyes stopped him. Luna wrapped the patent carefully in oilcloth and tucked it into her satchel. Outside, she saddled their steadiest wagon mule herself, checking the cinch twice. The morning sun painted the mountains gold as she climbed onto the wagon seat. Red stood in the yard, his tall frame tense with worry and something else pride. Perhaps, watching her take up this fight. Luna clicked to the mule, and the wagon rolled forward toward town. She didn't look back, but she could feel Reds's eyes, following her until the road curved out of sight. The county courthouse buzzed with whispers as Judge Harris adjusted his spectacles. Banker Harlan stood at the front, a satisfied smirk playing across his face as he presented a stack of papers. As you can see, Your Honor, the McGraw claim is invalid. These documents clearly show the heavy oak doors creaked open. Every head turned as Luna Bell stepped into the room, her blue dress dusty from the road. She held a weathered document. High sunlight from the tall windows catching the golden seal. Your Honor, she called out, her voice clear and strong. I have something you need to see. Luna strode forward, ignoring the gasps and murmurs. Her boots echoed on the wooden floor. As she approached the judge's desk, I found this among Emily McGraw's personal papers, she explained, carefully unfolding the patent. This is the original land grant, signed by the territorial governor himself. Judge Harris examined the document, his eyebrows rising at the official seal. Harlan's face reddened as he sputtered. That's impossible. Silence. The judge's gavel cracked like thunder. This patent is authentic. The McGraw claim stands. He fixed Harlan with a stern glare. And we'll discuss your fraudulent papers later. The courthouse doors burst open again. Reds McGrath filled the doorframe, breathing hard from his desperate ride to town. His eyes found Luna standing tall before the judge's bench, her head held high. The room fell silent as Red strode forward. To everyone's amazement, he dropped to one knee before Luna. Not for heirs, he declared, his voice rough with emotion. Not for land. He took her hand in his massive one. For love, Luna Belliff, you'll have me. The courthouse held its breath, waiting for her answer. Weeks stretched into a gentle rhythm at the McGraw Ranch. The old parlor, once silent and dust-covered, now rang with children's voices each afternoon. Luna stood before her makeshift chalkboard, teaching the ranch hands' little ones their letters and numbers. Her patience never wavered as small fingers traced wobbly alphabets. Outside, hammer strikes echoed across the pastures as Reds and his men mended fences. His deep laugh, once rare as spring snow, now rolled freely across the prairie. The other hands noticed how their boss whistled while he worked. His massive shoulders relaxed and easy. When evening drew near, the house glowed with warmth. At the long supper table, ranch hands and their families gathered, passing steaming bowls of Lunas. Cooking. Stories and jokes flew back and forth while lamplight danced on tin cups and pleased faces. After the meal, Reds led them in prayer, his voice strong and sure. His calloused hand found Luna's, holding it tight as he thanked the Lord for their blessings. The simple gesture spoke volumes of their deepening love. Later, they sat together on the porch, wrapped in peaceful quiet. Above them, Stars scattered like diamond dust across the velvet sky. Crickets sang in the tall grass, and yellow lamplights spilled through the windows behind them. "You gave me back my home," Red said softly, his eyes on the darkened prairie. Luna squeezed his hand. "God gave us each other." Red's turned to her then, his weathered face gentle in the starlight. He leaned down and kissed her with tender care. Together they gazed out over their land, their sanctuary of love and chosen family. The giant rancher and his beloved wife sat hand in hand, their hearts full of gratitude for this gift of a hopeful future. Thanks for taking a moment to feel with me. If this story reminded you of what matters, hit subscribe. I'll be here tomorrow, continuing our story.